mind games, those subtle, insidious attempts to twist your perception, to make you question your reality. The chessboard of manipulation, where the rules change depending on their mood, and the goal is always to make you feel smaller, weaker, less sure of yourself. But what they didn't count on was your ability to play the long game. They came armed with deception, half-truths, and petty tricks. You came armed with understanding, with a mastery of the human mind that turned their games into child's play. Because where they sought to confuse, you sought to observe. And observation is the sharpest weapon of all. Mind games rely on one thing: your reaction. They need you to flinch, to stumble, to lose your balance. But when you understand psychology, you see through the game. You realize that their moves aren't clever. They're predictable. Gaslighting, a desperate attempt to rewrite reality. Silent treatment, a hollow ploy to make you beg for their attention. Every tactic they use is a mirror, reflecting their own insecurities. And the moment you recognize that, their power shatters. Because you've stopped reacting. You've started studying. They thrive on control, on the illusion that they hold the upper hand. But control is a fragile thing, easily broken by someone who knows how to wield silence, patience, and observation. When you master psychology, you stop playing their game. Instead, you create your own. You turn their manipulations into lessons, their mind games into insights. And with every move they make, you grow stronger, sharper, more untouchable. Because you're not just surviving their games, you're dismantling them. The beauty of psychology is that it reveals the why behind the what. Why do they need to control you? Why do they twist reality? Why do they feel the need to play games in the first place? The answer is simple: fear. They're afraid of being exposed, afraid of losing power, afraid of facing their own inadequacies. And fear makes people desperate, sloppy, predictable. Once you understand this, their tactics lose their sting. You see the person behind the mask, the insecurity behind the manipulation. Mastering psychology doesn't mean outplaying them. It means outgrowing them. It means seeing their games for what they are: distractions. You no longer waste your energy trying to win a game that isn't worth playing. Instead, you focus on yourself, on your growth, on building a life that doesn't revolve around their chaos. Their games become background noise, a faint echo of the control they once thought they had. And you become untouchable, not because you've defeated them, but because you've transcended them. They try to make you doubt yourself, but self-awareness is your armor. When you know your own mind, their tricks fall flat. Their attempts to make you question your worth, your choices, your reality, they bounce off like dull arrows against steel. Psychology teaches you to understand not just others but yourself. And self-understanding is the greatest defense against manipulation. When you know who you are, no one can tell you otherwise. Mind games are a distraction, a way to keep you tangled in their web. But when you step back, when you see the full picture, the web unravels. Their tactics aren't unique. They're textbook. Projection, deflection, guilt-tripping, each one a cliché in the playbook of manipulation. And once you recognize the pattern, you stop being a player in their game. You become the observer, the one holding the board, the one who decides when the game ends. Winning isn't about beating them at their own game. It's about refusing to play. Psychology gives you the tools to see through the illusions, to stay calm in the face of their chaos, to hold your ground when they try to shake it. And the best part? Watching their frustration when they realize their tricks no longer work. Because the power they thought they had was an illusion, and you've seen through it. The moment you stop reacting, you take away their power. Their games only work if you engage, if you let them pull your strings. But when you respond with calm, with clarity, with understanding, you become the one in control, not of them, but of yourself. And that kind of control, the kind that comes from self-mastery, is something no one can take from you. Emotional intelligence is your secret weapon, the quiet skill that transforms you from a player in their mind games to the master of the board. It's the ability to see beyond the surface, to interpret the hidden motives behind their words and actions. They rely on confusion and chaos to keep you unbalanced, but emotional intelligence cuts through the noise. It's the steady hand that allows you to navigate their labyrinth with clarity, responding not with raw emotion, but with calculated precision. While they try to manipulate, you dissect their intentions with surgical focus. Their intentions are rarely noble. They disguise control as concern, manipulation as care, and deceit as misunderstanding. But emotional intelligence sees through the masks. You notice the inconsistencies, the way their tone betrays their words, the hesitation before a forced compliment, the subtle shifts in body language when the conversation turns. They thought their tricks would distract you, but you've learned to pay attention to what isn't said, to the tension beneath the surface. And once you've identified their game, you can decide how to play, or whether to play at all. Mastering emotional intelligence isn't about outsmarting them. It's about outlasting them. It's about responding with intention instead of reacting impulsively. They want your anger, your fear, your uncertainty. They want you to respond emotionally so they can steer the interaction. But your emotional intelligence denies them that power. You don't react. You analyze. You take a breath, observe their strategy, and respond in a way that shifts the dynamic entirely. They depend on predictability, but emotional intelligence makes you unpredictable. They expect outrage, defensiveness, or submission, but you offer none of those. Instead, you respond with calm, with poise, with a clarity that leaves them grasping for control. They wanted you to be their pawn, but your emotional intelligence makes you the architect of the board. You move with purpose, making every word and action deliberate. The key to emotional intelligence is balance. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about understanding it. You recognize your feelings, acknowledge them, but don't let them dictate your actions. While they're trying to provoke, you're assessing. While they're trying to dominate, you're observing. And in this balance, you find power. You no longer dance to their tune. You compose your own. They hate the precision emotional intelligence brings because it turns their chaos into clarity. It exposes their tactics, leaving no room for ambiguity. They rely on your confusion to maintain control, but emotional intelligence dismantles their strategy, piece by piece. Every time you respond with calm instead of panic, with understanding instead of frustration, you remind them that their power was an illusion. Emotional intelligence doesn't just help you see through their games, it helps you see through your own patterns. It reveals where you've been vulnerable, where you've allowed manipulation to thrive. And once you understand yourself, their power over you diminishes. You're no longer the person they could manipulate because you've evolved beyond their reach. They tried to confuse you, to manipulate you, to twist your emotions into a weapon against you. But emotional intelligence turned the tables. It gave you clarity, composure, and control. And now, every move you make is deliberate, every response calculated. They thought their mind games would leave you scattered, but you've become focused, unshakable, untouchable. Detachment is the shield they never saw coming. While they plot their moves, stringing their manipulative words and actions together to provoke a reaction, your silence dismantles their power. They want control, and control begins with your emotions. They thrive on your anger, your confusion, your defensiveness. But when you detach, when you strip away their ability to push your buttons, you become an enigma. Their tricks fall flat because your calm is impenetrable. Their strategy hinges on chaos. They pull you into emotional whirlpools, hoping to drown you in your own reactions. But detachment is your lifeboat. It doesn't mean you stop feeling, it means you stop reacting. Their bait, whether it's a jab disguised as a joke or a guilt trip framed as concern, goes untouched. And without your response, their game collapses. They tried to pull you in, but you stayed rooted, unshaken, watching as their attempts fizzled into nothing. Detachment isn't indifference, it's mastery. You see their attempts to provoke you for what they are, desperate bids for control. But instead of meeting their energy, you hold steady. Their insults, their accusations, their manipulations, they're all powerless against the calm you've cultivated. They expect you to lash out, to defend yourself, to prove something. But your refusal to engage leaves them exposed, scrambling to regain the control they've lost. When you're detached, you don't play their game. They rely on your emotional investment to steer the narrative, to manipulate the dynamic. But detachment breaks the cycle. It shifts the power dynamic entirely. Suddenly, they're the ones on edge, unsure of how to proceed. Your lack of reaction creates a void they can't fill, a silence they can't control. And in that void, their plans unravel. They hate your detachment because it denies them the satisfaction of seeing you struggle. Every time you remain calm in the face of their provocations, you remind them of their powerlessness. They wanted you to be their puppet, dancing to their strings of manipulation. But your detachment cuts those strings, leaving them fumbling with their own insecurities. Detachment gives you perspective. It allows you to step back and see their tactics for what they are: childish attempts to assert dominance. You recognize the patterns, the predictable ways they try to corner you. And once you see the pattern, you're no longer trapped in it. Your detachment frees you from their cycle of manipulation, giving you the clarity to move on your terms. They might accuse you of being cold, distant, unfeeling. But detachment isn't about shutting down. It's about rising above. It's about refusing to let their chaos dictate your peace. While they flail, trying to provoke, you remain composed. And that composure is more powerful than any argument, any counterattack. It shows that you're untouchable. In the silence of detachment, they reveal themselves. Their desperation grows louder, their tactics more transparent. They start to unravel, exposing the insecurities they tried so hard to hide. Detachment doesn't just protect you, it exposes them. It forces them to confront their own weakness, their own need for control. Projection is their oldest trick, a sleight of hand where their weaknesses are passed off as yours. It's subtle, almost invisible, unless you know what to look for. They hurl accusations, casting their insecurities onto you, hoping you'll carry the weight of their flaws. You're too sensitive, they say, while they crumble at the slightest critique. You're selfish, they claim, while their actions scream of self-interest. But when you've mastered psychology, projection becomes their most obvious move. You don't absorb it, you reflect it right back. Their projection reveals everything they wish to hide. Every insult, every accusation, every deflection. It's a mirror into their soul. They accuse you of being controlling because they fear their own lack of control. They call you unreliable because they can't depend on themselves. They project their fears, their failures, their insecurities, hoping you'll mistake them for your own. But you've learned to see through the game. Their words no longer sting, they amuse. Recognizing projection is like seeing the magician's hand mid-trick. The illusion is shattered, the spell broken. You realize their attempts to shift blame are less about you and more about their inability to face themselves. They don't criticize you because you're flawed. They criticize you because your strength reminds them of their shortcomings. And once you see that, their words lose their power. Projection thrives in the absence of awareness. They count on your confusion, on your willingness to internalize their accusations. But when you're aware, when you see the patterns, projection becomes their confession. Every word they use to attack you is a word they're too afraid to say to themselves. And in their fear, they give away their game. You've learned to separate your identity from their insecurities. Their projection is not your reflection. It's a desperate attempt to unburden themselves, to lighten their emotional load at your expense. But you're no longer their scapegoat. You stand firm, unyielding, watching as their accusations fall to the ground, powerless against your clarity. They may try to guilt you, to convince you that their issues are your responsibility. But you've mastered the art of discernment. You know what's yours to carry and what belongs to them. And their insecurities, their fears, their flaws, those are burdens you refuse to bear. They're not yours, and they never were. Projection doesn't anger you anymore. It educates you. Each accusation, each insult, each deflection becomes a window into their mind. You learn their fears, their weaknesses, their hidden wounds. And with that knowledge, you become untouchable. Because how can someone manipulate you when their every move reveals their intentions? In seeing their projection, you also see your own strength. Their need to project is a reaction to your refusal to conform, to shrink, to accept their narrative. You've become a mirror they can't escape, reflecting their true selves back at them. And while they struggle with that reflection, you stand tall, unwavering. Silence is a weapon sharper than any word, a space where their control unravels. While they weave their games with clever phrases and manipulative tones, your silence becomes their undoing. They thrive on engagement, on your willingness to respond, to defend, to argue. But when you respond with nothing but calm, deliberate silence, the balance shifts. They expected noise, but you give them quiet. And in that quiet, their true intentions seep through the cracks. Silence isn't passivity, it's power. It forces them to fill the void, to explain, to overcompensate. Every second of your silence stretches their discomfort, peeling back the layers of their facade. They stammer, they deflect, they scramble to regain the upper hand. Because silence leaves them alone with their own words, their own manipulations, their own insecurities. And that's a space they can't control. When you master silence, you turn their game against them. Their manipulations depend on your reactions, your energy, your willingness to engage. But silence robs them of that fuel. It's a mirror they can't avoid, reflecting their tactics back at them. And in their rush to fill the void, they reveal the very truths they sought to hide. Silence, strategically used, is their greatest adversary. They hate the emptiness silence creates because it demands authenticity. In your silence, their rehearsed lines falter. Their calculated charm fades. They're forced to confront their own intentions, to speak without a script. And without your reactions to guide them, their games become clumsy, transparent. Silence strips away their control, leaving them exposed. You don't have to explain yourself in silence. You don't have to argue, defend, or clarify. Silence speaks for itself, louder than any response. It tells them you're not playing along, that their games no longer work, that you've seen through the illusion. And as their discomfort grows, you remain still, unflinching, watching as they unravel. Silence is strategy, not surrender. It's the space where your power resides, untouched by their chaos. They wanted you to react, to be drawn into their web of manipulation. But your silence keeps you free, unentangled, out of reach. It creates a boundary they can't cross, a reminder that their words no longer hold sway over you. They'll try to provoke you, to force a reaction, to break the silence. But every word they speak only deepens their discomfort. Silence is patience, waiting for them to expose themselves. And they will, because they can't bear the void. In their desperation to regain control, they overplay their hand, revealing their true intentions in the process. Your silence doesn't just protect you, it teaches them. It shows them that their tactics are futile, that their games have lost their audience. It forces them to confront the emptiness of their manipulation, to face the reality that their power was never real. Silence, wielded wisely, is a lesson they won't forget. They craft their words like weapons, aiming them to provoke, to draw out your emotions, to lead you into the trap they've set. Their power depends on your reactions, the anger, the defensiveness, the hurt that gives them leverage. But when you withhold those expected reactions, the entire dynamic shifts. Their carefully laid plans crumble as they realize you're not the puppet they thought you'd be. You've cut the strings by refusing to play your part. Emotional reactions are their fuel. They use your responses to validate their control, to manipulate the narrative, to make you feel like you're on unstable ground. But when you intentionally withhold, when you respond with calm instead of chaos, you disrupt their strategy. They were prepared for an argument, a plea, a confrontation. They weren't prepared for indifference, for composure, for the kind of silence that speaks volumes. And in that stillness, they lose their footing. Withholding reactions isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's understanding that not every provocation deserves a response, that not every battle is worth fighting. By controlling your emotions, you maintain your power. While they escalate, you remain composed. While they grasp for control, you quietly remind them that you are the one in charge of your own narrative. Your restraint becomes their frustration, their undoing. When you refuse to react as expected, you force them to question their approach. They second-guess their words, their tactics, their assumptions about you. And in their hesitation, their vulnerability is exposed. They scramble to regain control, but their desperation only highlights how much they relied on your predictability. By breaking the pattern, you become unmanageable, unpredictable, a force they can't contain. Your lack of reaction creates space for clarity. In that space, their intentions become glaringly obvious. The insults disguised as jokes, the veiled threats, the manipulative guilt trips, they all lose their subtlety when met with calm observation. You see their game for what it is, a shallow attempt to provoke and control. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You're no longer a player in their game. You're the observer. They thrive on emotional chaos, but your calm dismantles their power. Their attempts to steer the interaction fall flat because you refuse to be led. You don't lash out. You don't defend. You don't explain. You simply exist in your own peace, unbothered by their theatrics. And that peace? It's their greatest enemy. Refusing to react doesn't mean you're suppressing your emotions. It means you're channeling them into strength, into clarity, into control. You feel the anger, the frustration, the hurt, but you don't let it show. You hold it like a quiet flame, a reminder of your power. And as they falter, struggling to make you react, you realize just how much control you hold. They expected you to crumble, to lash out, to give them the satisfaction of seeing you lose control. But your refusal to react leaves them powerless, exposed, scrambling to adapt. Their manipulation depends on your compliance, and without it, their game falls apart. Your calm is their undoing, your restraint, their frustration. Predictability is their playground, the foundation on which all their mind games are built. They observe, analyze, and exploit the patterns in your behavior, twisting your routines and reactions to their advantage. They anticipate your next move before you even make it, confident that you'll play the role they've scripted for you. But when you break those patterns, when you shatter their expectations, you become unmanageable. Their greatest weapon, their ability to predict you, becomes useless. Their games depend on repetition. They know how to provoke you, how to corner you, how to lead you down the same paths, over and over again. Each argument, each manipulation, each carefully crafted insult is designed to elicit a response they've seen before. But when you respond differently, when you defy their expectations, their entire strategy collapses. Suddenly they're navigating uncharted territory, and they're lost. Breaking patterns doesn't mean acting erratically. It means acting strategically. It means recognizing the traps they set and choosing a different path. Instead of anger, you respond with calm. Instead of defensiveness, you offer silence. Instead of playing their game, you step back and watch as they try to figure out your next move. Your unpredictability leaves them reeling, unable to regain the upper hand. They rely on your consistency to control the narrative, to steer the interaction in their favor. But when you disrupt that consistency, you force them to confront their own lack of control. Every move you make becomes a variable they can't account for, a reminder that their power was always an illusion. They thought they understood you, but your ability to break free from their expectations makes you an enigma. Unpredictability isn't chaos, it's freedom. It's the ability to choose your responses instead of being guided by habit or emotion. It's the realization that you are not bound by the patterns of the past, that you can redefine the dynamic at any moment. And with every unexpected move, you reclaim more of your power, leaving them scrambling to adapt. Their frustration grows with each broken pattern. They try to provoke the same reactions to lead you back into familiar territory, but you refuse to follow. Your unpredictability becomes their greatest challenge, a puzzle they can't solve. And as they falter, their desperation reveals the cracks in their facade, the insecurity behind their control. Breaking patterns isn't about being difficult. It's about being deliberate. It's about choosing not to play the role they've assigned you, about stepping off the script and writing your own. And as you break free from their expectations, you force them to confront a reality they can't manipulate. Your unpredictability becomes their undoing. The beauty of unpredictability is that it puts you in control. They can no longer dictate the terms of the interaction because they can no longer predict your responses. Every move you make becomes a calculated disruption, a reminder that you are no longer the person they thought they could control. And in that realization, their games lose all meaning. They thought their ability to read you was their greatest strength, but your ability to change the game has turned it into their greatest weakness. Their reliance on predictability has become their downfall, and your willingness to adapt has made you untouchable. While they struggle to regain control, you remain unbothered, unshakable, unstoppable. In breaking patterns, you've broken their power. They can no longer use your predictability against you, no longer manipulate the narrative to their advantage. You've become a force they can't contain, a presence they can't predict, a challenge they can't overcome. And now their games are nothing more than a memory, a reminder of the strength you've gained by mastering the art of unpredictability. Control is their comfort zone, their anchor in a sea of chaos. They thrive on predictability, on knowing how to press your buttons, how to steer your emotions. But your mastery of psychology turns that comfort into confusion. You've become something they can't pin down, a moving target that defies their expectations. Humans are drawn to control what they can understand, but you've made yourself incomprehensible. You're no longer playing their game. You're rewriting the rules, and they're scrambling to keep up. They hate what they can't understand because it exposes their limitations. Their power relied on their ability to read you, to predict your moves, to pull the strings. But now, those strings hang limp. You've stepped out of their grasp, and every action you take feels like a mystery they're desperate to solve. You're calm when they expected rage. Your silence when they expected argument. It leaves them unsettled, second-guessing their every move. Your unpredictability isn't random. It's deliberate. You've learned to use their assumptions against them, to disrupt their rhythm with subtle shifts in your behavior. They relied on patterns, on knowing where to find you, but you've moved beyond their reach. Every time they think they've figured you out, you show them another layer, another facet they didn't see coming. Their frustration isn't just amusing, it's empowering. Their need for control is rooted in fear. Fear of losing the upper hand, fear of being exposed, fear of being vulnerable. Your mastery of psychology lets you see this fear for what it is, the foundation of their manipulation. They want to control you because they can't control themselves. And the more they try to dominate, the more their weakness becomes apparent. You've become the mirror they can't look away from. When they can't understand you, they can't predict you. And when they can't predict you, they can't manipulate you. Your mastery of psychology turns their tactics into tools for your growth. Their attempts to provoke you become lessons in patience, Their manipulations become case studies in insecurity. They wanted to control you, but you've turned their game into a classroom, and they don't even realize they're the subject. Being an enigma doesn't mean being aloof. It means being intentional. You've learned that the less predictable you are, the more control you have over your interactions. They wanted a pawn, someone they could move at will, but you've become the architect of the board. Their need to understand you becomes their downfall, because it leads them in circles, chasing shadows they can never catch. They'll accuse you of being cold, calculating, even cruel. But their words are just another attempt to regain control, to define you in terms they can comprehend. Your mastery of psychology makes you immune to their labels because you see them for what they are, projections of their own insecurity. They can't handle the fact that you've outgrown their grasp, so they lash out, hoping to pull you back down. Words are their tools, their weapons, their disguise. They wield them carelessly, using flattery to manipulate, guilt to control, and half-truths to confuse. Human nature craves shortcuts, the path of least resistance in conversation. They rely on this tendency, counting on you to skim over the surface, to accept their words at face value. But your mastery of psychology has taught you the power of precision. You've learned to listen, not just to what is said, but to what is left unsaid. And with each deliberate word, you dismantle their manipulative intent. Precision in communication is a skill they can't match. While they throw vague accusations or sweeping generalizations, your responses are sharp, focused, and undeniable. They try to twist the narrative, to blur the lines between right and wrong, but your clarity cuts through their fog. Every word you choose is a calculated move, turning their own tactics back on them. They wanted confusion, but your precision brings everything into stark focus. Their manipulations depend on ambiguity. They use emotional language, hoping to cloud your judgment, to make you react without thinking. But you've mastered the art of stepping back, of analyzing their words with a critical eye. You hear the contradiction in their tone, the inconsistencies in their story, the subtle shifts that betray their intent. And once you see their game, their words lose their power. Precision isn't just about choosing the right words. It's about refusing to engage with the wrong ones. They bait you with accusations, hoping to drag you into an argument. But you don't bite. Instead, you respond with calm, measured statements that leave no room for misinterpretation. Your clarity disarms them, leaving them fumbling for control. They thought their words would dominate you, but your precision turns the tables. Their secrets become more obvious, their tactics more transparent. The emotional distance boundaries provide allows you to observe without being pulled into the chaos. And in that space, you find the freedom to make choices that serve you. Manipulators thrive on access. They need your reactions, your involvement, your engagement to maintain their hold. Boundaries deny them that access. They force them to operate without the tools they've grown so accustomed to using. And as their usual tactics fail, their secrets begin to unravel. They can't manipulate someone who refuses to play along. Setting boundaries isn't easy, especially with those who resist them. Manipulative people often react with anger, guilt-tripping, or even doubling down on their efforts to control you. But their resistance is proof of the boundary's power. It's a sign that you're disrupting their agenda, that you're reclaiming your space in a way they can't counter. The more consistent you are, the more their power diminishes. Boundaries aren't just defensive, they're transformative. They don't just protect you from manipulation, they redefine the relationship entirely. When you refuse to be drawn into someone's hidden agenda, you force them to confront their own behavior. Whether they choose to change or not is up to them, but your boundaries ensure that their choices no longer impact you. They thought their secrets were safe because they assumed you'd always be there to shield them, to excuse them, to be a part of their cover. But boundaries reveal a different truth. You are no longer their accomplice. You've stepped out of their web, cut the threads that bound you, and left them to face the consequences of their actions alone. Building strong observational skills is a transformative practice. It's not just about seeing, it's about perceiving, decoding the subtle language of human behavior that words often fail to express. In a world where people carefully curate their narratives, observation becomes your most reliable tool for discerning truth. They thought their secrets would remain hidden because they underestimated your ability to see through the veil. But observation, it strips away the illusions, revealing truths they never intended for you to find. Observation is an art, one that begins with attention to detail. It's the way someone's voice wavers when pressed on a particular topic, the way their body shifts when the conversation grows uncomfortable. These micro-expressions, subtle and fleeting, are the cracks in their facade. While they focus on controlling their words, their behavior tells the story they don't want you to hear. The more you train yourself to notice these details, the sharper your ability to discern becomes. In personal relationships, observation helps you navigate emotional terrain with clarity. Are they being sincere, or are their actions riddled with contradictions? A friend who avoids eye contact while reassuring you, a partner whose tone doesn't match their words. These inconsistencies speak volumes. Secrets thrive on ambiguity, but observation cuts through the haze. It gives you the tools to separate genuine connection from manipulation. Professionally, strong observational skills are a superpower. They allow you to read the room, anticipate unspoken objections, and understand hidden agendas. A colleague's hesitation during a meeting, a boss's abrupt shift in tone, the body language of a potential client. These cues reveal more than any spoken word. They give you the upper hand, enabling you to respond with precision and insight. Secrets in the workplace, whether strategic or personal, don't stand a chance against someone who knows how to watch and listen. Observation is more than just watching. It's listening with intent, feeling the energy of a space, and piecing together the puzzle of human interaction. It's noticing patterns in behavior and understanding when something deviates from the norm. That deviation is often the clue, the breadcrumb that leads to the hidden truth. Secrets rely on the assumption that no one is paying close enough attention. But observation dismantles that assumption entirely. The beauty of observation is that it doesn't just expose others, it reveals yourself. As you hone your ability to discern, you begin to notice your own reactions, your own patterns, your own tendencies. This self-awareness enhances your emotional intelligence, allowing you to navigate relationships with greater understanding and authenticity. It's a feedback loop. The more you understand yourself, the better you become at understanding others. Secrets are vulnerable to observation because they create tension. That tension manifests in 1,000 tiny ways. In the way someone avoids certain topics, overcompensates in their explanations, or deflects questions with humor. To the untrained eye, these behaviors might seem inconsequential, but to an observer, they're glaring red flags. Power isn't about perfection. It's about resilience. It's about knowing that you'll face challenges, setbacks, and doubts, but choosing to rise anyway. Doubt will always exist. It's a part of being human, but it doesn't have to rule you. The more you act despite your doubts, the weaker they become. And the weaker they become, the less control manipulators have over you. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the refusal to let doubt win. Every time you choose belief over doubt, you reclaim a piece of your power. It's a process, a practice, a daily decision to trust yourself more than the voices that try to undermine you. And as you do, you'll notice something remarkable. The manipulators start to fade into the background. They lose interest. Their words lose weight. Their presence becomes insignificant because they can't manipulate someone who doesn't doubt their own strength. When you doubt your power, you shrink. You make yourself small, quiet, and easy to control. But when you embrace your power, you expand. You become bold, loud, and impossible to ignore. The choice is always yours. You can give power to your doubt, or you can reclaim it for yourself. The former keeps you caged. The latter sets you free. And freedom, as messy and unpredictable as it may be, is always worth the fight. They focus your attention on the past and the future, distracting you from the most important battlefield, the present moment within yourself. They remind you of your mistakes, your failures, your insecurities, painting your past as a weight too heavy to overcome. They fill your mind with fears of the future, of what might go wrong, of what you might lose. But the real power, the truth they don't want you to see, lies in what's inside you right now. What lies within you is not only greater than what's behind or ahead, it's untouchable. The past is a chain only if you let it be. Manipulators love to drape it around your neck, tightening it with reminders of your lowest points. They make you believe your history defines you, that you are nothing more than the sum of your mistakes. But here's the reality. Your past is a lesson, not a sentence. It's a chapter, not the whole book. What lies within you is the ability to rewrite, to transform, to rise above the narrative they've tried to trap you in. And the future. It's their favorite tool of fear. They'll whisper about what might happen if you fail, if you misstep, if you dare to try. They paint it as a storm, but it's nothing more than a blank canvas, waiting for your brush. The future doesn't hold power over you unless you give it power. What lies within you, your resilience, your creativity, your strength, is what shapes the future, not their dire predictions. To understand what lies within you, you must quiet the noise of the past and the future. This is where they try to keep you distracted, caught in regret or anxiety, unable to see the present clearly. But within you is the power to center yourself, to ground yourself in who you are right now. It's not an easy task. It requires self-awareness, courage, and a willingness to confront the parts of yourself you've avoided. But once you do, the distractions fall away, and their hold over you weakens. What lies within you is not fragile. It's formidable. It's the source of your strength, your passion, your drive. It's where your insecurities transform into assets, where your doubts dissolve into clarity. And they fear this because they have no access to it. They can manipulate your perception of the past and instill fear of the future, but they can't touch what's inside you. That's your domain, your sanctuary, your source of freedom. They rely on your blindness to this inner power. As long as you're looking backward or forward, you're not looking inward. And as long as you're not looking inward, they can control the narrative. But the moment you turn your gaze inward, everything changes. You see their tactics for what they are: distractions, smoke, and mirrors. Desperate attempts to keep you from realizing your own potential. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The greatest power lies in understanding yourself. It's not about erasing the past or ignoring the future. It's about integrating them into a larger understanding of who you are. The past provides lessons. The future provides opportunities. But the present, the self within, is where action happens. It's where growth occurs, where decisions are made, where freedom begins. And that's what they fear most: your ability to act independently of their influence. What lies within you is the power to rewrite your story, to take the pen from their hands and craft your own narrative. It's the power to let go of the past, to embrace the present, and to shape the future on your terms.